What's going on, guys? This is the Edge DFS, the Showdown show. We're doing Cowboys versus Eagles. Tyson Smith here, joined by Ellie Hernandez. Ellie, what's going on, man? Are you excited for this shitty, terrible game that we're about to see?
Absolutely not. I can't believe that they didn't flex the game out. So it's going to be a complete shit show, and I am not excited. What about you?
The first thing we got to talk about is I'm really, really excited about our boy
Benvenuti.
Ben DiNucci, baby.
You and like four other people.
You didn't hear the sound. It's a little TikTok inside joke. But anyways, we're going to move on to, let's see what's going on here with, this is like some League of Legends odds and shit here. Like, minus 562 and 84% win probability. We've got a total of 42.5. Dallas has an implied total of 16 points with a 10.5 spread.
That might be a little too high for him.
Look, I get the team is devastated by injuries. I get they're on their third string quarterback. Is this just a little aggressive? I mean, like you always say, these are two professional teams. Now that, look, Ben DiNucci is not he's not he's probably not a starting quarterback in the NFL quality player. But he's had a week with the team now. Like, they just threw his ass in there last week, and they were down by 20-something points. Can they actually keep this close? I mean, what do you think about this, man?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they got completely destroyed by the Washington Redskins. The Washington Redskins. And,
the football team skins.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry. That's right.
Yeah.
I apologize to anybody who's offended. Yeah, but the Washington Football Club, or whatever they go by now, Antonio Gibson, AJ Gibson, whatever the hell his name is, he just ran through them on like 4 carries. So I have no interest in this game whatsoever, and I think Dallas might be a Division II college school at this point. Like, I just don't even get it. But I'm still going to play, and I'm going to have to figure out how we're going to build. So,
all right, so let's move on to injuries. It looks like, obviously, Andy Dalton's questionable. I don't see how this guy plays. I mean, he could play. If he does, obviously that changes a lot. I think the line moves a little bit. I think this is a little bit more of a competitive game. It's more of a NFL style game here. But when it comes to the Eagles, you got Miles Sanders out, so we got another Boston Scott. That's how you say his name. Boston Market, Michael Scott, Boston Company, whatever his name is. Dallas Goedert was activated off the IR, which is big news. He will play, and you got Jalen Reagor will play. So it looks like the Eagles are slowly getting some of their pass catchers back. We don't have to, rely on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. And yes, I did say that. I did say that with the lisp because that's the only way to say it.
You said it right.
Yeah, just add a lisp to it, and you're good. Anything jump out injury-wise for you here?
Dallas Goedert being healthy probably is the difference that is going to allow me to play this slate in general. If he would have been out, I honestly do not know enough about the Eagles practice squad to figure out how the hell they're going to build an offensive team. Again, this is a shit show. So him being in, and especially Jalen Reagor being in too, that definitely helps. It's gonna concentrate ownership right there. So it makes it a little more interesting for me, and I'm kind of glad that happened.
Yeah, agreed. So let's move on to, what do we think ownership is going to be here? I mean, I would say we're pretty decent with just guessing where the ownership is going to go, considering the fact that, I mean, I just don't see how the Cowboys are not every player just super low owned. Guys like Gallup, guys like CeeDee Lamb, even these guys are probably going to be so low owned, and maybe we'll have some more love for Greg the Leg this week just simply because he might be all the volume that like when it comes to ownership. I think we can get a lot of leverage. I know you don't want to. I know it's possible this could be a huge blowout, but me personally, I want to embrace. I want to embrace the low ownership that's going to come in on Dallas, and I want to embrace some 4-2 or some 2-4 stacks with Dallas. 3-3s and 4-2s and 5-1s the other way to Philly are going to be really popular. It's going to be a popular build. Just throwing it through an optimizer, you're going to get Ben DiNucci and Ezekiel Elliott with with Carson Wentz at captain and 3 other Eagles. I personally am looking forward to embracing the Cowboys because this is a professional football team. These guys are professionals. There's been a lot of bad publicity this week behind the Cowboys with the coaching staff, the Mike McCarthy calling out his team. Now, that could go one of two ways. This could absolutely be a blowout. The team could fall apart. Jerry Jones could be cutting players on the field, like both with a knife and with it, actually cutting these guys. Or it could go the other way, where these guys are a little bit motivated. These are professional athletes. They've played football their entire lives. They step up, they act like professionals, and they make this a reasonable game. When it comes to ownership, where do you think the top 3 guys fall in as far as ownership goes? It's obviously going to be Carson Wentz is going to be the chalkiest player today. He could be 80% owned total. What about Zeke Elliott? Are people automatically going, okay, well, there's no one else on this team, and the quarterback can't throw the ball, so let's just go with Zeke Elliott, which I think is kind of ridiculous because he has no offensive line, and if they're down by 20 points, they're not going to give him the ball. It's going to be the Tony Pollard show. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Zeke Elliott will probably be the chalkiest player, and then I think it's Carson Wentz and Boston Scott. Boston Scott and Travis Fulgham, I think they might be more evenly balanced as far as ownership goes, but with Travis Fulgham being priced up at 9.2 and then Boston Scott at 8.8, I think some of the ownership might shift off of Travis Fulgham, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. But I think Ezekiel Elliott is going to be pretty chalky. I think most people are just going to jam him into every lineup because he's clearly the best player on the team. Well, that's still questionable given the fact that he's fumbling now. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, Zeke is still a powerful running back, and he's going to get his touches. But you're right. If they're down by 20 points, that might just be a waste of a flex spot.
I just don't know how Zeke gets. Look, if the game script works out where you think this can be a 24-20 game, and it can be relatively close leading up into the fourth quarter, then yeah, get you some Zeke Elliott because he's going to be the focal point of this offense. But the defense knows that. The offensive line for the Cowboys is absolutely devastated. I know that the Eagles' defense isn't anything to write home about, but I think they've been getting slightly better lately. They're notorious for terrible pass defense and pass secondary. At this point, if I were the Cowboys, I would say, you know what? What are they? 1-5, 1-2-6, something like that. Let Ben DiNucci just throw the damn ball. See if you got anything in this guy. There's nothing to lose. Do you have a potential backup for the future next year? Who knows? Maybe I'm giving this guy too much credit. Let him throw the damn ball. And you got 3 great receivers. You got Zeke out of the backfield. Just let him throw the ball. Anyways, we're going to move to the breakdown. Speaking of Ben DiNucci and Carson Wentz, Carson's 11.8. Okay. Pretty high for him. Let me look at what he was last week. Let's see. So he was 10.8 last week. He was 9.4 the week before. So he's trending up, obviously. I think he's had some better games recently. If you look at his box score here. You got a 30 and a 31 the last few weeks. Not bad. But when it comes to Ben DiNucci, he's 3,200 cheaper than Carson Wentz. He's cheaper than a lot of the wide receivers and running backs that you would want to play on this slate. Are you getting any Ben DiNucci, considering he's probably going to be middle tier owned? He's probably going to be 30% owned, if I had to take a guess.
Yeah, if he's sitting around 30% ownership, his pricing is nice. That it becomes a viable play. Um, I I don't know if I'm going to force him in, but I will be above the field. Just I mean he could take care of all the points on Dallas.
I mean, the bottom line is he's going to touch the ball every single play for the Cowboys offense. And even if he accidentally falls into a screen pass touchdown, he falls into the end zone, he's touching the ball every single play. At 8,600, the value is there. I think they obviously DraftKings priced him well. If he would have been priced any lower, I think he would have been nearly a lock. I know that sounds terrible to say, but you got to look at the pricing and you got to look at opportunity. And even if he's the worst quarterback of all time, he could still fall in the end zone once and still accidentally throw a touchdown pass. And at that point, in a 42.5 total, he could be in the optimal. So don't just say, who the fuck is Ben DiNucci? He's a third stringer. I'm not going to play him because he's priced well. If he was at 10K, I would X him out of my player pool, obviously. But he's at 8,600. He's worth a shot. He's not going to project well. But, I mean, just look at the projection here. He's 3 points less than Carson Wentz. His value is higher. And I like doing some preliminary crunches without really any information added. He shows up more often than Carson Wentz. I think he's going to pop in the optimizer. So does that make his ownership rise? Or do people intentionally limit him? I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know how to feel about this. We'll have to wait for some ownership projections to come out probably tomorrow morning. But so something to keep an eye on. Don't just plug him in. If he's 60, 70% owned, I might fade him. That's the thing. Right. Just wait on ownership. Let's move to running back here. We're going to talk about Philly's running back situation. So obviously Miles Sanders is out, unfortunately. And you've got Boston Scott and Corey Clement are your two options here. Now, last time they were on, were they Showdown? Was it last Sunday? Or 2 Sundays ago? I don't even remember. All these showdowns are blending together at this point.
I know it was a Thursday night.
I know we did a show with them recently, and I was relatively high on Corey Clement just because of the opportunity. I faded Boston Scott. He ended up catching that touchdown at the very end of the game to win it and propel him, I think, into the optimal, or at least he had a pretty good game. But Corey Clement, he's nothing to write home about. But in a game where they're favored by quite a bit, if the game script works out to where this is a blowout, don't you think they're going to put Corey Clement back there and let him run the ball a little bit more than he has when they're down?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I really think the Philly. So here's one thing I want to look at. Philly's offensive line is number 22 when it comes to running the football, and Dallas's defensive line isn't awful. So I really think Corey Clement is going to offer his most value in the passing game. What is he? 1,200?
Yeah, he's cheap.
22.
He's 1,800. He was like 5,500 last week.
Yeah, that's a completely different thing. So I'll be a little bit heavier on Corey Clement. When you're talking about your 2-4 stacks, you could get pretty interesting here by going Boston Scott and Corey Clement, and then stacking up for Cowboys. Now that's super risky, but still, it's definitely an interesting build that you can get. And at 1.8K, he is going to for sure be in some of my lineups.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way you can't have at least a couple shares of him. I think it's possible that he's going to be maybe slightly higher owned just simply because of that. But we'll have to see how that goes. If you look at his snaps from last week, Corey Clement got 23% of the snaps compared to Boston Scott's 73%. So Boston Scott's definitely getting the lion's share. And last week, Boston didn't have a great game in the first half. He didn't have a great game leading up until maybe the fourth quarter, and he was still getting the ball a lot. So I think it's obvious that Boston Scott's going to get most of the volume. He Boston ran 24 routes last week, which was relatively high for the team. Corey Clement only ran 7 routes. So it's obvious who's getting most of the looks here, but I think as a dart throw, Corey Clement is a great option. I think he's a lot better than a lot of our other dart throws that we've looked at in the past, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's look at Dallas's running back situation. There's really only one guy to talk about here is Tony Pollard. So here's the question: Tony Pollard and Clement are priced around the same. Let's see what they're projected. If they're projected around the same, I think they are. Yeah, they're literally projected right around 5 points. So who's going to get the ownership here? Are people going to forget about Tony Pollard because Zeke is going to be super popular? And is that a pretty decent pivot to fade Zeke and just go with a little bit more Tony Pollard and find another high price guy to go with?
Yeah, I like it. I don't mind fading Zeke for Tony Pollard. Zeke is going to be chalky as hell. Tony Pollard, he may be chalky. I don't know if anybody's going to want to play a backup running back from a team who's projected to lose by over 10 points.
Yeah.
And that's really what we need to be paying attention to. If he comes in at, 15% ownership, I'd be comfortable doubling the field on him. He could get involved in the pass game. So it's going to completely depend on the ownership trends here, but at 10% of the price, it's worth it.
I mean, so look at this. So last week, Tony Pollard got around 40% of the snaps. Zeke got 70%, and the routes run was pretty decent for Pollard. He got 10 routes run, and Zeke got 12 routes run. And when it comes to targets, Zeke got 2, Tony Pollard got 1. So it's pretty even with the game script from last week. If you think that we can have a similar game script where Dallas is playing from behind for the entire game, I think Tony Pollard is a great value at 1.6K. He got 8 rushes last week. He got 10 rushes the week before. Those were all games that they were losing in. They were getting blown out in. So if you're projecting this as a blowout, which I think most people are, Tony Pollard is a good option because they're not going to waste. I don't think they're going to waste Zeke with running the ball late in the third quarter when they're down by 15 points or 20 points or whatever. Which is another reason why we'll talk about our fate of the night. But spoiler alert, Zeke Elliott is a candidate for me at least. So let's move on to.
Technically, he's a candidate on mine, by the way, but we'll get to that.
Oh yeah, technically yes, you're right, exactly. All right, so let's move on to the Dallas wide receivers. All right, so just right out of the gate, tell me what your thoughts are. How are you handling wide receivers here? Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb has sort of taken over as that number 2 option. Michael Gallup has not had a good couple weeks. There's been some trade rumors out there surrounding him. How do you handle these wide receivers in a potential garbage time matchup? The fourth quarter make or break time, when you're down by 20 points and they're throwing the ball across the middle, you can rack up an extra 4 or 5 catches for these guys when they don't really matter. To me, that's something I'm looking at and I'm considering. Just because they don't have a good game in the first half and they're losing, I'm willing to play a lot of these Dallas wide receivers.
I'm going to go down, just starting from the top and go through the top receivers, right? Amari Cooper, I don't think I'll have too much of him. I don't think paying $8,200 is worth it based on the opportunities that he's probably going to get. If Ben DiNucci has to throw the ball more than 30 times, this game is it's an absolute blowout. And I really think that hinders the top end performance of Amari Cooper specifically.
Yeah.
Just because the one-dimensional offenses don't do well in the NFL. But CeeDee Lamb, I think he gives a different edge. He has the ability to get involved in the running game, and he's a fucking beast, dude. He's tearing it up, and he's going to continue to be a primary wide receiver, and he's going to continue to be just somebody who's showcased in this offense. I think Mike McCarthy loves him. Might be the only player that he likes on his fucking team because he's a piece of shit apparently. But I like CeeDee Lamb tonight, especially at 6.6. I'll have a decent amount of exposure. And then Michael Gallup at 3.4K. I mean, I don't think you're doing anything wrong by jamming him in a little bit. It's not going to hurt too much. I mean, 3,400 isn't awful. Um,
Dude, I love Gallup today, man. I,
yeah,
I love
I
Gallup for this matchup. Last week he ran 100% of the snaps, and he had the most routes run. Now his air yards and target share were not good, so he's getting opportunity. He's out there on the field. This could be a situation where maybe him and Andy Dalton aren't clicking. So the fact that Ben DiNucci's coming in could change the dynamic slightly. If the dude's on the field 100% of the time, I think it's a good for 3,400. A guy getting this much opportunity with the quarterback that could potentially be targeting him more than previous weeks. I am super high on Gallup today. I'm really excited about Gallup.
and I agree with you, dude. I mean, other than Amari Cooper, I think it's okay to have a decent amount of exposure to CD, a decent amount of exposure to Gallup, and honestly, Cedric Wilson at $400 isn't a bad play. I don't think. We have no idea who Ben DiNucci is going to want to throw to.
Yeah.
And he could have all of his rapport with Cedric Wilson playing on the, fucking practice squad together.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
maybe you don't know. We don't know what's going to happen with this offense. We have no game film on him except for 3 passing attempts.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on it. We may be able to get a decent amount of exposure to Cedric Wilson. And other than last week where he didn't have any targets, Cedric Wilson's not a bad play at $400. So I don't know. Just something to keep in mind.
Cedric Wilson's somebody to look at. I mean, the last game he played was Arizona against the Giants in a win. He had 4 receptions for 22 yards. He scored 10 fantasy points, so there must be some hidden touchdown or something in there. Did he really have a 30-point fantasy game?
Yeah, 2 touchdowns.
Wow. That's how much I don't care about the Cowboys. I completely missed that. Dude, that's a great
100
option.
yards.
That's a great option. For $400, yeah, that he'll be in my player pool. He'll be rotated in quite a bit. So Michael Gallup to me is my favorite option price-wise. Obviously, Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is a great option. I'm not going to hold back on him if he's in most of my lineups. I'll be okay with that. I'll totally be okay with that. I'm going to embrace this passing game because, like I said, if they're losing this whole game, I mean, it works out good either way because if the Cowboys are going to keep up with the Eagles, they're going to have to pass the ball and they're going to have to score through the air. If they're losing, you're going to get a lot of second half garbage time receptions and passing yards. So either way, I like the passing game for this team. Let's move on to the Eagles. This is a little bit interesting now. So we've got Alshon Jeffrey's out. Deshaun Jackson's out. We've got Fulgham, Greg Ward, Jalen Reagor, John Hightower, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and some other guys. How are you handling this? Is Fulgham priced too high?
I hope so. I hope Fulgham is priced too high so the field doesn't play him. I feel better paying for him than pretty much just anybody on this slate. I know a couple weeks ago I was talking about who the hell is this guy. But he's their offense. He's their guy. He's their number 1 wide receiver, and these target shares are only increasing. Well, kind of. I mean, 3, 13, 10, and 11.
Yeah, exactly.
I think his floor is pretty high, and depending on where ownership lands, I really think Jalen Reagor is going to be chalky as hell at 4.4K. So
yeah, and he's a sexy name. He's in the news, so people are thinking about him more, for sure.
Right, and I really think that relationship that Wentz and Fulgham have developed over the past couple of weeks is pretty spectacular, and I think they're going to continue to go that way. It doesn't make sense to don't fix what isn't broken.
I'm glad you said that because the last week Fulgham had 100% of the snaps. The week before he had 96. He had 44 routes run. He was the highest. He had 41% of the market share of the air yards on the entire team. Like, he is the clear number 1 on this team, by far.
Right.
26% target share last week. On the season, he's at 26% average. I could keep going on and on and on. This guy is the clear number 1. Fulgham, hopefully you're right. Hopefully his ownership will be a lot less because of his price. But you also got to look at Greg Ward. Last week he was on the field for 100% of the snaps. He was on the field, and he ran 41 routes. He ended up with only 6 targets, which is a little bit low, but I think he's the clear number 2, Greg Ward, and I think at 5,000 he's also a really good option. Similar to CeeDee Lamb, I think his pricing is. He had a touchdown last week. He had 42 yards. I think he's a good option. I don't know where his ownership is going to be. I don't know if he's going to be over-owned. It's hard to tell with these middle-of-the-range guys. These are the kind of guys that can break the slate. We saw that with Curtis Samuel the other day. Middle of the pack. He's a third wide receiver, 4th option on the team. Those are the guys that slip between the cracks sometimes and can really cause you trouble. Any love for these cheaper guys, Hightower, Whiteside, Quez, and Deontay Burnett? Any love for any of these guys as bullets?
I have no idea who Quez is.
Me neither.
But Greg Ward might be an interesting pivot off of Jalen Reagor. At that price tag, I'm pretty sure that's going to get his ownership pretty much taken away. Then John Hightower at 1.2 isn't awful. But again, Cedric Wilson at $400 would probably be the way that I go if I'm trying to just punt. So
yeah, and you got Rager coming back, so that sort of eliminates Hightower and Whiteside from. They'll be in my player pool, but I don't think I'm going to have more than one lineup with either one of these guys for sure.
Now, keep in mind, I do want to point something out. That's kind of the same line of reasoning that we had with Greg Ward the other night, whenever that other Eagles game was.
Yeah.
Because Deshaun Jackson was coming back. Greg Ward had a decent night. So keep in mind, just pay attention and just keep an eye out for stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ertz is out still. Dallas Goedert is back. What was his injury? Was it a high ankle sprain? What was the actual injury?
Playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that's the injury. Yeah, I have no idea.
It was an ankle injury. So he was on the IR for a few weeks. His last game was week 3. He had a great week 1. Didn't do too well from there, but that could just be, like you said, playing for the Eagles. That's not a him issue. You got Dallas Goedert. And Richard Rodgers. Now, Richard Rodgers is still a decent option. I mean, he's 5,600. I don't think I can get to him at that price, but he was targeted quite a bit last game. This team is a 2 tight end sort of team. I mean, you could for the same reason you could play Goddard when Ertz was playing. You could consider playing Rodgers with Goddard playing. How you handling the tight end situation?
Yeah, I may have some double stacks there. I mean, if you're running 4-2 and you're heavy on Philly, that's a great way to get different. You could run Goddard and Richard Rodgers and still probably get Carson Wentz, and you may not be able to get Fulgham, but yeah, it might be worth playing because, again, Richard Rodgers and Daniel Goddard are Carson Wentz likes his tight ends. There's a good chance he can get them both involved.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And not necessarily specifically playing both of them in the same lineup, but just having the option of playing a backup tight end. You're typically like, I'm not going to do that. But on the Eagles, like I was saying, you could play Goddard when Ertz is starting still because they spread it around and they really utilize their tight end position. I will say this: Hakeem Butler was inches away and a pass interference penalty away from getting a touchdown there at the end of that game. I don't think I'm going to get any of him this week, considering he's probably the 4th option, and there's a lot of their wide receivers are coming back. But somebody to keep an eye on in the future. Just saying. Let's go to tight ends for Dallas. Let's see. Is Blake Jarwin out? Yeah, he's out. He's done. So we basically got Dalton Schultz, and Bell. I mean, with a rookie quarterback starting his first NFL game, does he rely on his tight ends a little bit more? Because little 5-yard outs here and there, little slant boy patterns here and there. How are you handling this? Because I don't know what the hell to do with these guys.
Yeah, I'll have some Dalton Schultz. I don't think I'll have Blake Bell in my player pool. then whoever the hell Sean McKeon is, I mean, that sounds like a made up name.
Yeah, it probably is. Let's just look at the numbers surrounding this tight end position. So, last week, Dalton Schultz got about 90% of the snaps. He ran 20 routes. He actually got 23% of the air yards for the team, and his target share was at 20%. Pretty good for a tight end. I know that they were losing the game last week, so those numbers are up from previous weeks. They're above average for sure. But Dalton Schultz at that price, hey man, I might have some of him for sure. For sure.
Oh, yeah, I will. I like Dalton Schultz, and I think the Cowboys like him too. So I think they're going to get him involved in the game.
I think an issue could be he might be slightly overowned just because I did notice him popping in the optimizers. When I crunched with no settings, he was showing up quite a bit, simply because I think by default there's going to be a lot of 3-3 stacks going on here. You're going to have your expensive guys. You're going to have Zeke Elliott. You're going to have Fulgham. You're going to have Wentz. They're going to try to fit in some of the cheaper guys from Dallas. Like maybe you're going to get a Gallup. Maybe you're going to get a Dalton Schultz stuck in there as sort of a one-off. So keep an eye on Schultz's ownership. If it's above 20% or 25%, I don't know if I like him that much. All right, what do you think about kickers this week?
Hold on, I'm trying to pull this up. I'm open to Dallas's kicker with Greg the Leg. This is a low total, so I think having them in your player pool is going to be important. Even in the high total game, the Atlanta Carolina game that was projected for over 54, around 54 points.
Yeah,
the kicker was Young Ho Koo was in the optimal.
Yep.
So I think you have a better chance for a kicker to be in the optimal in this slate. Again, I think you got to get different somewhere else. So it's going to be interesting, but I'll have some decent exposure to the kickers here.
I think these kickers are going to be high owned. I think each one of these guys can be 30% owned. So that is an area of leverage that you can, if you think that this game could, if your game scripts are working out where this could be hit the over and be a little bit of a sloppy shootout. You know, we've seen bad teams. Like, whenever a bad team shows up on Thursday Night Football or something where it's, Dolphins versus Jaguars, and, they hit like a 55, 60-point total because they're just bad teams. The offenses are better than their defenses, and they just go off. I don't think that this is necessarily a situation where that happens, but I don't see it out of the realm of possibility that Dallas can put up 24 points. I really don't. This is an NFL team. No one's got any tape on Ben DiNucci. They could use this guy as a fucking, like a Nebraska offense. They could just fucking option this guy. Who knows what they're going to do with this guy? We don't know. It's a wild card. He could come out and throw for 42 yards and get injured in the first quarter, and CeeDee Lamb could be playing quarterback. I just don't know. But the everything that's up in the air, I'm willing to just let it ride and actually play a lot of Cowboys this week. And I don't necessarily have to play their kickers because I think they're going to be too popular. Now let's go to defense. I mean, the Eagles defense is at 6,200. The DraftKings was smart to price them up a bit this week, considering the matchup. I mean, I think there's better options at that price tag at 6,200. We've already talked about multiple guys who have higher upside than the Eagles defense. Obviously, they can get multiple pick sixes. They can get some fumble recoveries against a rookie quarterback. Are you getting a lot of Eagles defense mixed in with your 5-1s and 4-2 stacks?
Yeah, I will. I'll have to look at the ownership again, but I'll probably have a decent amount of exposure to Philly's defense. Philly's defensive line is so they're number 4 in the pass, and they're number 3 against the rush.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so let me just double check here. But yeah, that gives you a little bit more. It creates a little bit more of a unique situation. Their defensive line is good. Their defensive line has been good for a while. It's their secondary that's always been questionable. So,
yeah.
if Ben DiNucci isn't out here running quick slants and getting the ball out of his hand in 2 seconds, this could be a very, very, very dangerous game for him. I think he could end up getting hit a lot.
Yeah.
The Cowboys' offensive line is also not very good right now. Let's see, against the pass, I can't even find him on this chart. So I fully anticipate that the Eagles defense could end up with at least 4 or 5 sacks.
Yeah.
So that's 4 or 5 points. If you're game scripting it out and you throw in the kickers and Boston Scott and Corey Clement, then you're game script for that blowout. So it's definitely something that I'll have some exposure to just in case that game script hits.
This is an interesting matchup for me because I just, by nature, I love to play contrarian, and I just think opposite of a lot of people. So when a game like this comes up and the entire field is just on, off the Cowboys and just stacking heavy with the Eagles, even though there is a very good chance that this is a blowout, I still feel like there's opportunity to just get a ton of leverage if by who knows the Cowboys just get lucky and are able to keep this close. It's a tough situation. It's almost one of these situations where you're like, should I sit this one out? But I think it's so obvious. I think it's so obvious that I'm like, I'm gonna go the opposite. I'm gonna go the opposite with this. I'm gonna go 4-2s Dallas. I'm gonna go 2-4s with Dallas. I'm gonna get my fair share of Eagles for sure, and I might even do some 3-3s with a low owned dart throw in the captain, just because 3-3s are gonna be so chalky. How are you handling this overall? Before we get to our fate of the nights, how is your roster construction gonna break down for a game that's a blowout? Are you gonna embrace the Eagles? And by doing that, how are you gonna be different?
I probably am going to embrace the Eagles, and I am going to be different. I am only going to have 4-2 and 5-1. Again, this is a slate for that. I understand where you're coming at from a leverage perspective. I feel like I have no idea how this game is going to go, and I might be leaning a little safer in this particular situation. I think this is a shit show. I think Philly and Dallas are both just terrible teams. Philly tied to the Washington football team. I don't know. Like that's a terrible measure of your ability that's a great measure of your ability is comparing you against Washington.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I'm going to be heavy on Philly, and I'm going to pray that I can get different by fading one of these. Jalen Reagor. Honestly, that's looking like a better fade each time we talk about him. Because I don't expect Fulgham to have that much ownership at 9,200. So we'll see.
All right, let's move on to our fate of the night here. Ellie's going bold. He's saying fuck the Cowboys. If DraftKings would let him do a 6-0 stack, he would just go all in on it. Can't blame him for that. We'll get to yours here in a minute. We have the same idea, I guess. We have the same pick, sort of. I think Zeke Elliott, there's always a chance that he can go off. Always a chance. But at his price, what is he, like 10-2 or 10? He's 10-8. If he's going to be the most popular Cowboy player, which I don't see how he's not, I'm just going to fade him, and I'm going to hope that Ben DiNucci gets garbage time passes across the middle to Gallup and CeeDee Lamb and things like that. I don't see how Zeke Elliott in a blowout is a good option, and even in a close game, I still think that he can get stopped. Just like you were saying about Philly's defensive line, they rank high. They're not bad against the rush. In fact, they're pretty damn good. So can Zeke Elliott catch a couple balls out of the backfield, end up with 15 points with 1 touchdown and a couple catches? Yeah, obviously. Is that enough to get him in the optimal at 10.8K? I don't know. So for me personally, I'm fading Zeke Elliott. The entire Cowboys team, you're going to fade. How are you going to handle this? Are you going to stick in Greg the Leg? Are you going to stick in Gallup? Are you going to go with some Ben DiNucci in your 1 or your 2 spots that are open for Cowboys in this game?
I I still don't know. I think it's going to. I need the ownership projections to really figure out what I'm going to do when it comes to the Cowboys. I like. I like having some exposure to Michael Gallup. I like having some exposure to Dalton Schultz, and I'll probably stick closer to 4-2 for my 5-1 stacks. Then yeah, I'm going to be looking at Greg the Leg, maybe a little bit of Ben DiNucci, but those stacks are probably going to have the Philly defense in it. So I don't know how much I can actually pay up. And again, the Cardinals Cowboys slate, that actually wasn't optimal. Defense and Greg the Leg, right? So it's definitely possible, and it's something that I'll have to look at tomorrow when ownership projections update. But there's value all over the place too. I mean, Tony Pollard could be a guy that I throw in that one-off.
Yeah.
If he has 3 receptions for 25 yards at 1,600, you might be golden. So I might have a couple builds like that. I might just have a bunch of 5-1 builds. Who knows? I might just burn all my cash tomorrow. So
say his name again. Ben who?
Ben DiNucci.
Ben DiNucci.
What the fuck is happening? What is he throwing? Like, dude, he's gonna have the ball taken out of his hand. Like,
all right, we're gonna move on to our captain picks. This is our taking the stand. I'm going Michael Gallup, bro. At his price, I think he has a slate-breaking ability. Will he overcome the adversity of trade rumors and not getting targeted? I don't know. But I do know that he's going to be low-owned, in my opinion. I think he can be 4 or 5% in the captain. And that's the nuts right there. We showed it with Curtis Samuel. We've showed it in the past with like some random tight ends that are 4 or 5% owned. If he catches 2 touchdowns, one of which is in the first half and another one is garbage time, putting him in a 2-4, putting Gallup with Ben DiNucci, and then running it back with 4 Eagles. That's how, honestly, I think that's how you could treat this. You could find one guy who has a random good performance for the Cowboys and spread it out amongst the Eagles. What do you think about your Dallas Goedert here, man? It's his first game back. You think he can tear it up?
yeah, absolutely. I think Dallas Goedert's going to get involved. I think, honestly, I think he's better than Zach Ertz, and he might be their best receiver. I don't know what's going on with Travis Fulgham. I like the guy a lot, but he has a very small sample size of performance output. Dallas Goedert has been successful in the past, and he is a favorite for Carson Wentz. He can take 1 reception up the field for 60 yards and a touchdown. He has a little bit of speed. He's young Zach Ertz. I don't know how to describe him any other way. And I love my tight ends at captain too.
Yeah, so. Tight ends at captain are great, especially a guy coming off the IR. There's a lot of question marks. I think that potentially, and just thinking about this in general, for if you're playing lower stakes or if you're playing in the big contest, whatever it is, people who are building on their phones, there's a large portion of people entering these contests just building on their phones, not doing a whole lot of research, just picking players they know. In this case, if you look on the Draftkings app, his average per game is probably low. He hasn't played the last couple of weeks. Maybe people avoid Dallas Goedert because he's got that questionable tag next to him or the probable tag or whatever. I think his ownership can be a little bit lower. I think it's a great option. And not to mention, this guy's contract, he's under contract until 2022, which is exactly how long Ertz is under contract, except for his contract is like 10% of what Ertz is. They want to get Dallas Goedert involved. They want this guy to be their future tight end. They don't want to pay. They're on a semi-rebuild here. There's no reason for them to want to pay Zach Ertz anymore. Zach Ertz could be out for the whole season, I think, maybe. At this point, they're going to embrace Goedert, and I think Ertz is trade bait this offseason, or he might even get cut, to be honest. So going forward this season, Goedert is the guy. I hope I spelled his name right. Did I spell his name right?
Yeah, you did. This guy looks like Andrew Luck's.
Yeah, he does.
Dude, he looks like Andrew Luck's cousin. I'm gonna censor what I normally say there, but yeah. I like him, man. I like Dallas Goedert, and I think he's in a good position, especially against Dallas. Here's the thing, man. I want to remind our viewers, and I want to remind you of this. I I agree with you. I think this is a great leverage play to stack up Dallas. The biggest concern that I have with Dallas is I don't think Mike McCarthy has control of this team. If the team does, if they're not bought in, they could just come out and say, fuck you, and not play. And I know this is the NFL and that's bullshit, but that's literally how Derek Carr got injured 2 years ago and broke his back or whatever. He said something stupid and his offensive line was saying, fuck off, man. So I really think that these teams are vindictive and some of these players. Dallas is too good. They have way too much talent to be in the situation that they're at. And I think they're pissed off, and I think Mike McCarthy is losing control of the team pretty quickly. So that's my biggest concern coming into the slate, and that's why I want to fade Dallas and really not have anything to do with them. But that's just
look,
my point there.
The chances are that you are absolutely right. Vegas thinks that you're right. I think the majority of the field is going to think you're right. And that's where I am loving this shit, because if it doesn't work out today, fine. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to mortgage my home on this game. I'm just going to play what I normally play. I'm going to be responsible with my bankroll. And there's just as good of a chance of me losing tonight as the other night when I nailed it. I would rather just embrace the leverage and say, you know what? Give me all of those Cowboys. And if for whatever reason the Cowboys keep it close, I'm not saying they're going to win. They're a 10.5 point underdog. If they can keep the game close and they can have a couple of big plays, I think you can really get huge amounts of leverage and really win a tournament, which is really all we're hoping to do. I'm not trying to min cash. I'm not trying to go 4-2 Eagles. Just thinking about the ownership that's going to fly in on the Eagles and trying to find a unique lineup, I'm going to have to put. I mean, who am I going to have to put in the captain for the Eagles? Hakeem Butler? Like, I don't know who to like. I don't know how to be different when I would say the Eagles are going to get double the ownership. That's just my guess.
So I kind of have a bold call. I think tomorrow we're going to see the heaviest ownership that we've ever seen on a defense and captain. I think we're going to have a shitload of them in defense. Yeah. So it'll be interesting.
I'm willing to, I will embrace the chalk when it warrants it, but when I see that a player or a position like defense or kicker or whatever is over-owned simply because of the Vegas total and not really accounting in the prices of those players on Draftkings, I think there's a situation that you could fade those positions. Like I said, I embrace the chalk when when a guy like Boston Scott is starting randomly at 4,200 or whatever, a couple weeks ago, that's good chalk. You should play that. But if Philly's defense is 50% owned tonight or 40% owned or tomorrow, I am going to uncheck them, and I'm going to get my leverage somewhere else.
I'm with you.
Any last thoughts to send us out on? We're right at 50 minutes. Thank you guys again for viewing this video. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing. We have a free Discord with projections for Showdown that you guys can jump into. Ellie and I are in there constantly talking about our exposures. We want to get your guys' opinion as well. Please join the Discord. Please comment, like on these videos. It really helps us out with the algorithm to get more views. The more views we get, I think we can start going live before lock to really talk about ownership and really break things down with you guys. So anyways, Ellie, send us out. What are your thoughts on the final score of this game?
27-10 Philly. I'm not excited for this. Honestly, I just wish they would flex this game out and we could get the Seahawks 49ers. And I don't like either of those teams. So, yeah, I don't know.
I'm thinking 27-24. I think it's going to be a little bit closer. I think it's going to be one of these 27 to 10, to 14 at the half or to 10 at the half. And then Dallas sort of makes his way back with a lucky play in the fourth quarter. You got an onside kick. You run the clock out, sort of a thing. I think that's how this game ends. I don't think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be a terrible game, but the viewership is still going to be there. You have the most popular team in the country, along with a pretty popular team in the Eagles. So there's no reason for them to flex this out. they're gonna get them. They're gonna get their money. They don't have to change any of their graphics and audible at the last minute to for the broadcast. So, anyways, guys, thank you so much. We'll see you for Monday Night Football. Also, we're doing reviews. We're reviewing our slates the next day. So tune in for a Monday video as well, talking about Sunday night, as well as a Monday night video as well. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Take it easy.